The notification sound was sharp against the sterile hospital silence. I stared at my phone screen, hands trembling as I typed the message that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family. "Dad's in the emergency room. Heart attack. Please come." I hit send to our family group chat and waited, pacing the fluorescent-lit hallway while my father fought for his life behind closed doors. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The first response came within minutes. My older brother Marcus, "On my way. Which hospital?" Then my youngest sister Emma, "OMG, is he okay? Driving there now." One by one, they trickled in. Concern, panic, love. Everyone except the one person whose response would break me in ways I never imagined possible. Sierra's message appeared last, 3 brutal words that would echo in my mind for months to come. Not our problem anymore. My name is Celeste Morrison, and for 26 years, I believed family meant showing up no matter what. I was the middle child who never quite fit the mold, caught between Marcus the golden boy and Emma the baby everyone adored. But Sierra, she was different. She was my twin, my other half, the person who was supposed to understand me better than anyone else in the world. Growing up in suburban Phoenix, we lived in a modest ranch house with a perpetually broken air conditioner and a backyard that never stayed green no matter how much Dad watered it. Mom worked double shifts at the diner downtown, her apron always smelling like coffee and bacon grease. Dad drove trucks for a living, his hands permanently stained with motor oil, his back aching from years of loading cargo across state lines. We weren't rich, but we were supposed to be close. That's what everyone told us. The Morrison twins, they'd say, thick as thieves. Sierra and I shared everything: clothes, secrets, dreams of getting out of Phoenix and making something of ourselves. We had our own language, finishing each other's sentences, knowing what the other was thinking with just a look. But somewhere along the way, that changed. Maybe it started when Sierra got the scholarship to Arizona State while I ended up at the community college, working nights at a 24-hour pharmacy to pay for classes. Maybe it was when she landed her first corporate job in marketing while I was still serving coffee at a downtown cafe, trying to save enough money to finish my nursing degree. Sierra moved into a sleek apartment in Scottsdale, complete with granite countertops and a view of the mountains. She drove a leased car that sparkled in the desert sun and wore clothes with names I couldn't pronounce. Meanwhile, I lived in a studio apartment above Mrs. Rodriguez's bakery, where the smell of fresh bread mixed with the sound of traffic from the street below. But I never resented her success. If anything, I was proud. When she posted pictures of her promotion dinner, I was the first to comment with heart emojis. When she complained about her demanding boss, I was the one who listened to her vent over late-night phone calls. When she needed someone to house sit during her business trips, I was always available, watering her plants and feeding her spoiled Persian cat. That's who I was in our family, the accommodating one, the reliable one, the one who remembered birthdays and organized holiday dinners and kept track of everyone's schedules. When Mom needed a ride to her doctor's appointments, she called me. When Marcus needed help moving apartments, I showed up with pizza and packing tape. When Emma broke up with her boyfriend and needed someone to cry to, my phone rang at 2 in the morning. And Sierra, she participated when it was convenient. She'd show up to family dinners if she didn't have other plans. She'd contribute to group gifts if someone reminded her 3 times. She'd help with family events if they fit into her carefully curated Instagram aesthetic. I told myself it was okay. People show love differently, right? Some people are naturally nurturing, and others are more independent. I convinced myself that Sierra's way of caring was just more subtle, more sophisticated than mine. The warning signs were there, scattered across years like breadcrumbs I was too loyal to follow. Like the time Dad was laid off from the trucking company and couldn't make rent. I emptied my savings account without hesitation, working extra shifts to cover both his mortgage payment and my own expenses. Sierra sent a card with $50 in it and a note that said, "Sorry to hear about your situation." Or when Mom was diagnosed with diabetes and needed help managing her medication schedule, I rearranged my work shifts to drive her to appointments, learned about carb counting and blood sugar monitoring, even bought her a fancy glucose meter with my employee discount from the pharmacy. Sierra liked the Facebook post about Mom's health journey, but never once offered to help with the actual work of caring for her. There was the Christmas when I spent 3 days making homemade gifts for everyone because money was tight. Hand-knitted scarves, photo albums filled with family memories, cookies packaged in mason jars with handwritten recipe cards. Sierra arrived empty-handed, explaining that she'd been too busy with year-end projects at work to shop. She promised to send something later. She never did. But the moment that should have opened my eyes happened 2 years ago at Emma's graduation party. I had spent weeks planning the celebration, booking the community center, coordinating the catering, making decorations that matched Emma's school colors. Sierra showed up halfway through the party, took a few Instagram photos with Emma, and left early for a date with her boyfriend of the month. Later that night, as I was cleaning up streamers and throwing away paper plates, Emma hugged me tight and said, "Thank you for making this so special. You always make everything perfect." In that moment, I felt seen and appreciated. But when Emma posted about the party on social media the next day, the caption read, "So grateful for my amazing family for throwing me the best graduation party ever." Amazing family, plural, as if Sierra's 30-minute appearance carried the same weight as my weeks of preparation. I should have been angry. Instead, I made excuses. Sierra was building her career. She was busy. She contributed in other ways. I was the one who chose to take on the role of family caretaker, so I couldn't complain when others didn't step up to the same level. Besides, we were twins. We had shared a womb, shared a bedroom for 18 years, shared secrets that no one else would ever know. That had to count for something, right? The day everything changed started like any other Wednesday in October. I had just finished my morning shift at the hospital, where I finally worked as a registered nurse in the cardiac unit. After 2 years of community college and 3 more years of nursing school while working full-time, I had achieved my dream of becoming a nurse. It wasn't glamorous like Sierra's marketing career, but it fulfilled me in ways she never seemed to understand. I was changing out of my scrubs in the employee locker room when my phone buzzed with a text from Dad. "Feeling chest pains, driving to urgent care. Don't worry the girls, probably nothing." My hands went cold. Dad never admitted when something was wrong. He was the type of man who worked through flu sims and claimed headaches were just part of getting older. If he was texting about chest pains, something was seriously wrong. I called him immediately. No answer. Then I called Mom at the diner. "Honey, I'm in the middle of lunch rush," she said, her voice strained over the noise of clattering dishes and shouting orders. "Can I call you back in an hour?" "Mom, Dad's having chest pains. He went to urgent care." The line went quiet, except for the background noise. Then I heard her telling someone she needed a break, her voice shaking. "Which urgent care? I'm leaving now." "I don't know, he didn't say. I'm going to call around."
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
It took 4 phone calls to find him. The 4th urgent care center confirmed that James Morrison had been brought in by ambulance and transferred to Desert Valley Medical Center. Ambulance. My father, the man who insisted he could fix anything with duct tape and determination, had been taken away in an ambulance. I drove to the hospital in a haze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. This was the same hospital where I worked, but entering as a family member instead of a nurse felt completely different. The fluorescent lights seemed harsher, the antiseptic smell more overwhelming, the sounds of monitors and intercoms more ominous. Mom was already there when I arrived, still wearing her diner uniform, her hair escaping from its hairnet. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by worry. "They're running tests," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The doctor thinks it might be a heart attack." Heart attack. The words hit me like a physical blow. Dad was only 58, too young for this, too stubborn to let something like a heart attack slow him down. But as I looked at Mom's pale face and trembling hands, I realized that stubbornness doesn't protect you from genetics or stress or the accumulated weight of years spent worrying about bills and working too hard to provide for your family. We sat in the waiting room for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes, before a doctor in blue scrubs approached us. Dr. Patel was young, probably around my age, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm Dr. Patel, your husband's cardiologist." Mom stood up so quickly she nearly lost her balance. I reached out to study her, my own heart hammering in my chest. "How is he?" "He's stable now, but he did experience what we call a STEMI, a significant heart attack caused by a complete blockage in one of his coronary arteries. We performed an emergency angioplasty and inserted a stent to restore blood flow. The procedure went well, but the next 24 hours will be critical." Critical? The word echoed in my mind as Dr. Patel explained the treatment plan, the medications, the recovery timeline. I found myself automatically taking notes on my phone, my nursing training kicking in even through my panic. Someone needed to remember this information, and Mom looked like she was barely holding herself together. "Can we see him?" Mom asked. "He's in the cardiac ICU. We typically limit visitors in the first few hours after the procedure, but you can see him briefly. Are there other family members who should be notified?" That's when I realized I needed to tell my siblings. In all the chaos of getting to the hospital and processing the medical information, I hadn't lot to contact them. "Yes, he has 4 children. I should let them know." Dr. Patel nodded. "The next few hours are crucial. I'd recommend having close family nearby if possible." After Mom went to see Dad, I sat in the waiting room and opened our family group chat. The 4 of us had been in this chat for years, sharing everything from memes to major life updates. It was called Morrison Squad, with a little crown emoji, a name Emma had chosen when she was going through her royal phase in high school. I stared at the blank message field, trying to find the right words. How do you tell your family that the foundation of your world might be crumbling? How do you communicate the terror of seeing your strong, capable father reduced to a patient connected to machines and monitors? Finally, I typed, "Dad's in the emergency room. Heart attack. Please come." I added the hospital name and room information, then hit send. The message appeared in the chat with a soft whoosh sound, and I watched as the read receipts started appearing one by one. Marcus responded first, his message appearing within 2 minutes. "On my way. Which floor? Do you need me to bring anything?" Then Emma, "OMG, is he okay? I'm getting in the car right now. Tell Mom I love her." I felt a surge of relief. This was what family was supposed to be. People who dropped everything when crisis hit, who asked what they could do to help, who understood that being needed meant showing up. But as minutes ticked by with no response from Sierra, my relief started to turn into anxiety. Maybe she was in a meeting. Maybe her phone was on silent. Maybe she hadn't seen the message yet. I sent another message. "Sierra, did you see this? Dad's in cardiac ICU." The read receipt appeared immediately. She had seen it. She was reading the messages, but not responding. Marcus arrived first, still wearing his work uniform from the construction site, his boots leaving dusty prints on the hospital floor. He wrapped Mom in a hug that lifted her off her feet, and I saw her shoulders relax for the first time since I'd arrived. "How is he?" he asked me quietly while Mom went to get coffee. I filled him in on the medical details, grateful to have someone to share the weight of the information. Marcus wasn't the most emotionally expressive person, but he was solid, reliable. When crisis hit, he showed up and he stayed. Emma arrived 30 minutes later, her college backpack still slung over her shoulder, her eyes red from crying. She was only 21, still young enough that the idea of losing a parent seemed impossible. "Is he going to be okay?" she whispered, and I realized that being the older sister meant being the one with answers, even when I didn't have them. "The doctors are optimistic," I said, pulling her into a hug. "The surgery went well. We just have to wait and see." We settled into the waiting room chairs, that uncomfortable plastic furniture that seems designed to remind you that you don't want to be there long. Marcus went to find better coffee. Emma curled up against Mom's shoulder. I kept checking my phone, waiting for Sierra's response. By evening, Dad was awake and talking, though he looked pale and tired, with wires and tubes connecting him to various machines. The nurse, someone I recognized from working in the hospital but had never really talked to, was kind and patient as she explained the monitoring equipment to Mom. "He's lucky," she told us. Getting here quickly made all the difference. The damage to his heart muscle was minimal. Lucky. I thought about Dad's text, about how he had driven himself to urgent care instead of calling an ambulance. I thought about what might have happened if he had decided to wait it out at home, if he had convinced himself it was just heartburn or stress. We took turns sitting with him, following the ICU's strict visitor guidelines. When it was my turn, he squeezed my hand and said, "Don't worry, sweetheart. It'll take more than this to get rid of your old man." But I was worried, not just about his physical recovery, but about the growing silence from Sierra. It had been 8 hours since I sent the first message, 8 hours since our father had a heart attack, since I had asked the family to come, since everyone except Sierra had dropped everything to be here. I stepped into the hallway and called her directly. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Her voice, bright and professional, invited me to leave a message and promised she'd get back to me as soon as possible. "Sierra, it's me. Dad had a heart attack today. He's okay now, but it was serious. We're at Desert Valley Medical Center. Please call me back." I hung up and immediately felt sick to my stomach. Something was wrong. Sierra might be busy, might be self-centered sometimes, but she wasn't heartless. There had to be an explanation. I tried texting her individually. "Please call me. Dad's okay now, but we really need you here." The message showed as delivered, but not read. Maybe her phone had died. Maybe she was on a plane for work. Maybe there was some reasonable explanation that I couldn't think of because I was exhausted and scared and running on hospital coffee and adrenaline. Marcus found me in the hallway, staring at my phone. "She still hasn't responded?" I shook my head. "I don't understand. She read the messages hours ago, but she won't answer. Maybe she's on her way and doesn't want to text while driving?" I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe that Sierra was speeding down the highway right now, that she would burst through the hospital doors any minute with tears in her eyes and apologies on her lips. But deep down, I knew better. If Sierra was coming, she would have said so. She would have asked for details, requested updates, done something to indicate that she cared about what was happening to our father. It was almost midnight when Mom insisted that Marcus and Emma go home to get some rest. "There's nothing more we can do tonight," she said. "The nurses said visiting hours are over anyway." I offered to stay with her, but she shook her head. "You have to work tomorrow. I'll sleep in the chair. They said I could stay, since he's in ICU." I hugged her goodbye, promising to come back first thing in the morning before my shift started. As I walked through the hospital parking lot to my car, I tried calling Sierra one more time. This time, it didn't even ring. The call went straight to voicemail, which meant she had either turned off her phone or blocked my number. Blocked my number? The thought hit me like ice water. But that was impossible. We were twins. We were family. You don't block your twin sister's number when your father is in the hospital fighting for his life. I sat in my car in the dark parking lot and opened our family group chat one more time. Marcus had posted an update. "Dad's resting comfortably. Doctors say tomorrow should bring good news. Thanks everyone for being here today." Emma had responded with heart emojis and a message about how proud she was of how strong Mom was being. Sierra's last seen status showed she had been active on the app 20 minutes ago. She was online. She was reading messages. She was choosing not to respond. That's when I saw it. A tiny line of text that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my sister, about my family, about the person I had spent 26 years defending and making excuses for. Sierra had finally responded to the group chat, but her message wasn't what I expected. It wasn't an apology for being late or an explanation of where she was. It wasn't concern for Dad or support for Mom. 3 words appeared on my screen, cold and final. "Not our problem anymore." I stared at the message until my eyes blurred with tears I didn't know I was crying. Not our problem anymore. Our father, lying in a hospital bed with a freshly stented artery, was not our problem anymore, according to my twin sister. I read the message again, hoping I had misunderstood, hoping autocorrect had somehow turned a message of love and concern into something so cruel I couldn't process it. But the words remained the same, stark and unforgiving in the blue bubble of the group chat.
My phone buzzed with immediate responses from Marcus and Emma, both of them clearly as shocked as I was. Marcus, what the hell, Sierra? Emma, are you kidding me right now? But Sierra's status showed she had gone offline. She had delivered her verdict and disappeared, leaving the rest of us to deal with the fallout. I don't remember driving home that night. I don't remember walking up the stairs to my studio apartment or changing out of my clothes. I only remember sitting on the edge of my bed at 3 in the morning, staring at Sierra's message, and trying to understand how the person I had shared a womb with, shared a childhood with, shared 26 years of family dinners and holiday mornings and late-night conversations with, could reduce our father's life-threatening medical emergency to not our problem anymore. But even then, even with the evidence right there on my phone screen, I made excuses for her. Maybe she was having some kind of mental breakdown. Maybe she was drunk or having a reaction to medication. Maybe someone else had access to her phone. Because the alternative was too devastating to accept. The alternative was that my twin sister, the person I had defended and supported and loved unconditionally for my entire life, had looked at our family's crisis and decided she was done with us, that she was done with me. I fell asleep holding my phone, hoping I would wake up to find an explanation, an apology, some indication that the Sierra I knew was still in there somewhere. But when I woke up 4 hours later to get ready for work, there were no new messages from her. There was, however, something else that made my blood run cold. Sierra had left the group chat entirely. The Morrison squad now showed only 3 participants instead of 4. She hadn't just refused to help with Dad's medical crisis, she had formally removed herself from our family. And that's when I finally understood that the person I had been making excuses for my entire life had never really existed at all. The sister I thought I knew, the twin I believed would always have my back, the family member I had prioritized above my own needs countless times over the years, was gone. Maybe she had never been real in the first place. All that remained was the stranger who could look at her father's heart attack and decide it wasn't her problem anymore. But what Sierra didn't know, what none of them knew yet, was that her cruelty had awakened something in me that I didn't even know existed. As I stood in my tiny bathroom getting ready to go back to the hospital before my work shift, I looked at myself in the mirror and saw something different. I saw a woman who was tired of being the only one who showed up. A woman who was done making excuses for people who couldn't be bothered to care. A woman who was about to learn that sometimes the people who hurt you the most also give you the greatest gift, the motivation to finally put yourself first. Sierra thought she was abandoning our family. What she actually did was free me from the obligation to keep carrying people who had never carried me back. And that freedom was about to change everything. The next morning, I walked into Dad's hospital room with coffee for Mom and a determination I didn't know I possessed. Dad looked better, some color back in his cheeks, though the monitors still beeped steadily beside his bed. Mom had clearly spent the night in the uncomfortable chair, her hair disheveled and her diner uniform wrinkled. "How are you feeling?" I asked Dad as I handed Mom the coffee. "Like I got hit by a truck," he admitted with a weak smile. "But Dr. Patel says I can probably go home tomorrow if everything looks good." I nodded, trying to focus on his recovery instead of the gaping absence in our family circle. But Dad noticed immediately. "Where's Sierra?" he asked, looking toward the door as if she might walk in at any moment. The question hung in the air like smoke. Mom looked at me expectantly, clearly assuming I had been in contact with my twin.
Even after 26 years, people still expected us to be a package deal, to know each other's whereabouts and thoughts without question. "She's not coming," I said quietly. Dad's eyebrows furrowed. "What do you mean she's not coming? Is she sick? Out of town?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the group chat, watching as his face changed from confusion to disbelief to something I had never seen before. Disappointment so profound, it looked like physical pain. Mom gasped when she read Sierra's message, her hand flying to cover her mouth. "She can't mean that. There has to be some explanation." But there wasn't. We all knew there wasn't. This was Sierra making a choice, drawing a line in the sand and daring us to cross it. Maybe she's going through something, Dad said finally, though his voice lacked conviction. People say things they don't mean when they're stressed. I wanted to agree with him. I wanted to believe that this was temporary insanity, that Sierra would come to her senses and show up with flowers and apologies and explanations that made everything okay again. Instead, I found myself saying, "Dad, when was the last time Sierra visited you and Mom without needing something?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Dad looked out the window at the desert landscape, his jaw working like he was chewing words he couldn't bring himself to speak. Mom stared at her coffee cup, probably running through her own memories and coming to the same uncomfortable realization I had reached in the middle of the night. "She's always been independent," Mom said finally, but the words sounded hollow even to her. "Independent is one thing," I replied. "This is something else entirely." That afternoon, while Dad napped and Mom went to the cafeteria for lunch, I sat in the hospital chair, scrolling through old text messages between Sierra and me. I was looking for clues, trying to pinpoint when our relationship had shifted from genuine sisterhood to me giving and her taking. The pattern was there, clear as daylight once I stopped making excuses for it. Every conversation was either Sierra needing something or Sierra complaining about something. When I had news to share, she would respond with minimal enthusiasm before steering the conversation back to herself. When I was going through difficult times, she was mysteriously busy with work or social obligations. I found the message thread from 6 months ago when I had been dealing with a difficult patient situation at work. A young mother had died unexpectedly, leaving behind twin toddlers, and I had been struggling with the emotional weight of it. I had texted Sierra, hoping for some comfort from the person who was supposed to understand me better than anyone. "Really hard day at work," I had written. "Lost a patient who reminded me of us at that age. Can't stop thinking about her babies." Sierra's response, sent 4 hours later, "Sorry to hear that. Hey, can you help me pick out an outfit for my date tomorrow? I can't decide between the blue dress or the black one." I had sent her photos of both dresses and told her she looked beautiful in both. I never mentioned the patient again. Another thread from last Christmas, when I had been feeling overwhelmed by all the family obligations and gift buying and meal planning. "Sometimes I feel like I'm the only one who cares about keeping our family traditions alive. It's exhausting being the one who remembers everything. Sierra, you choose to do all that stuff. No one's forcing you. BT, can you pick up Mom's gift from me when you're out shopping? I'll Venmo you." She never did Venmo me. I had bought and wrapped Mom's gift from Sierra, written the card, and watched Mom tear up reading Sierra's thoughtful message about how much she appreciated everything Mom had done for us. The evidence was overwhelming. For years, I had been Sierra's personal assistant, emotional support system, and backup plan all rolled into one. I had convinced myself that this was what love looked like, that some people just needed more support than others. But support was supposed to go both ways. Love was supposed to be reciprocal. Family was supposed to show up when it mattered. When Dad was discharged the next day, it was Marcus, Emma, and I who helped him get settled at home. We rearranged furniture so he wouldn't have to climb stairs, stocked the refrigerator with heart-healthy foods, organized his medications, and set up a schedule for checking on him throughout the week. Sierra's absence was like a missing tooth, noticeable in every smile, every family photo, every moment when we naturally expected her to be there. Emma kept glancing at the door as if Sierra might still show up with some elaborate explanation. Marcus kept checking his phone, clearly hoping for a message that never came. But it was Mom who broke my heart. She had set 5 places at the dinner table out of habit, and when she realized her mistake, she quietly removed Sierra's plate and silverware without saying a word. The gesture was so small and so devastating that I had to excuse myself to cry in the bathroom. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat in my car in my parents' driveway and made a decision that would change everything. I opened my phone and began typing a message to Sierra. "I need to understand what happened. Dad could have died. How is that not our problem?"
I sent it before I could second-guess myself. This time, I wasn't making excuses for her or trying to smooth things over. I was asking for answers. The response came faster than I expected. Some of us have moved on with our lives, Celeste. Maybe you should try it. Moved on with our lives. As if caring about our parents was somehow a sign of immaturity. As if showing up for family was holding her back from something better. I stared at the message until the words blurred together. Then I typed back, "Moved on to what? A life where you abandon people who love you?" Her reply was swift and brutal. "Love? Is that what you call it? You mean obligation, guilt, the constant expectation that I'll drop everything every time someone in this family has a crisis. I'm done with that. This wasn't just any crisis, Sierra. This was Dad having a heart attack. And he's fine now, isn't he? You all handled it without me, just like you handle everything else. Proves my point that I was never really needed anyway. Never really needed." The words hit me like a slap. Of course she wasn't needed, because I had spent our entire lives making sure she didn't have to be. I had taken care of everything so she could focus on herself, her career, her perfect life in Scottsdale. "You were never needed because I made sure you didn't have to be needed," I typed. "I covered for you so many times that you forgot what it felt like to actually contribute to this family." The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times, like she was starting and stopping responses. Finally, "That was your choice, not mine. I never asked you to be the family martyr." Family martyr. The phrase stung because there was enough truth in it to hurt. I had chosen to be the one who handled everything, who remembered everything, who showed up for everything. But I had done it because I thought that's what family meant. I had done it because I loved them. "You're right," I typed back. "I did choose to care about our family, and you chose not to. I guess we both have to live with our choices." This time, there was no response. I waited for 20 minutes, watching the screen for typing indicators or read receipts, but nothing came. Finally, I put my phone away and drove home. The silence from Sierra stretched into days, then weeks.
Dad recovered steadily, returning to work part-time with strict instructions about diet and exercise. Mom tried to act like nothing had changed, but I caught her staring at Sierra's empty chair during family dinners, her face reflecting the confusion and hurt we were all feeling. Marcus dealt with it by working longer hours and avoiding family conversations that might bring up Sierra's absence. Emma oscillated between anger and sadness, alternately cursing Sierra for her selfishness and wondering aloud if we had done something to drive her away. But it was Dad who surprised me the most. 3 weeks after his heart attack, he asked me to drive him to Sierra's apartment. "I need to talk to her," he said when I tried to dissuade him. "She's still my daughter." Sierra's apartment complex was one of those modern developments with a gate and a fountain and perfectly manicured desert landscaping. Everything was beige and brown and designed to look expensive. I had been there dozens of times over the years, usually to water plants or pick up mail when Sierra was traveling. We pressed the button for her apartment, and after a long pause, her voice crackled through the intercom. "Who is it?" "It's Dad," he said simply. Another pause, even longer this time. Then the buzz of the gate unlocking. Sierra was waiting in her doorway when we reached her floor, arms crossed, expression guarded. She had lost weight since I'd seen her last, and there were dark circles under her eyes that even her expensive makeup couldn't quite hide. "How are you feeling?" she asked Dad, her voice carefully neutral. "I'm fine," he replied. "Can we come in?" She stepped aside reluctantly, and we entered the apartment that I had helped her move into, helped her decorate, helped her turn into the perfect backdrop for her social media posts. It looked exactly the same, all clean lines and neutral colors and carefully curated decor pieces. "I'm not here to lecture you," Dad said, settling carefully onto her designer couch. "I just want to understand." Sierra remained standing, her posture defensive. Understand what? What happened to my little girl who used to crawl into bed with me during thunderstorms? What happened to the daughter who wanted to be a veterinarian because she couldn't stand to see animals suffer? I saw something flicker across Sierra's face, a crack in the armor she had built around herself. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. People change, Dad. People grow up. Growing up doesn't mean growing cold, he said quietly. When you were 6 years old, you brought home a bird with a broken wing. You cried for 3 days when it died, even though we tried everything to save it. That little girl cared so much about everything and everyone. That little girl was naive, Sierra replied, but her voice wavered slightly. That little girl was compassionate, and I miss her. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. I wanted to say something, to bridge the gap somehow, but I realized that this conversation wasn't about me. This was between a father and the daughter who had broken his heart. Finally, Sierra spoke. I can't be who you want me to be anymore. I can't be the person who drops everything every time someone needs something. I have my own life now. I'm not asking you to drop everything, Dad said. I'm asking you to care. There's a difference. Caring hurts too much, she whispered, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the sister I remembered, vulnerable and scared and trying so hard to protect herself that she had forgotten how to love. It does hurt, Dad agreed, but it's worth it. The people who love you, we're worth it. Sierra shook her head, tears starting to fall despite her efforts to hold them back. No, you're not, because one day you'll leave, just like everyone else, and I'll be the one left behind, broken and empty, and wondering why I let myself care in the first place. The words hung in the air like smoke, revealing the real reason behind Sierra's behavior. This wasn't about being selfish or narcissistic. This was about fear. Fear of loss, fear of abandonment, fear of caring too much for people who might disappear. But understanding her motivation didn't make her actions hurt any less. Everyone leaves eventually, Dad said gently. That's part of life. But cutting yourself off from love doesn't protect you from loss. It just guarantees that you'll be alone. I'm not alone, Sierra protested. I have friends, I have my career, I have a good life. Do you? I found myself asking. When was the last time you called any of your friends just to see how they were doing? When was the last time you did something for someone else without expecting anything in return? Sierra's face flushed with anger. Don't pretend to know my life, Celeste. Just because I'm not codependent like you doesn't mean I don't have relationships. Codependent. The word stung because, again, there was enough truth in it to hurt. Maybe I was too invested in taking care of everyone else. Maybe I did define myself by how much I could do for other people. But at least I did something. At least I showed up. You're right, I said. I probably am codependent. But you know what? When Dad was lying in that hospital bed, my codependency meant he had someone there who loved him. Your independence meant he had to wonder why one of his daughters couldn't be bothered to care if he lived or died. Sierra flinched as if I had slapped her. That's not fair. Neither is abandoning your family because you're too scared to let yourself feel anything. The accusation hung between us, sharp and cutting. Sierra looked back and forth between Dad and me, her composure finally cracking completely. I can't do this, she said, voice breaking. I can't be the daughter you want or the sister you remember. I'm just not built that way anymore. You're built exactly like the rest of us, Dad said firmly, with a heart that's capable of incredible love and incredible pain. The only difference is that you've chosen to close yours off. Because it's safer, Sierra exploded. Because caring about people who are going to leave you anyway is stupid and pointless, and I'm tired of being the one who gets hurt. The room went silent, except for the sound of Sierra's ragged breathing. She stood in the middle of her perfect apartment, tears streaming down her face, looking more broken than I had ever seen her. And despite everything she had put us through, despite the cruelty and the abandonment and the cold dismissal of our father's medical emergency, my heart ached for her. Because I could see the scared little girl she used to be, the one who cried over broken-winged birds and crawled into Dad's bed during storms. But I could also see that the woman she had become was someone I didn't recognize, someone who would rather be alone than risk being hurt. I should go, she said finally, wiping her face with the back of her hand. This is your apartment, I pointed out. I meant I should go away, really away, start over somewhere else, where no one expects me to be something I'm not. Dad stood up slowly, his recent heart attack still affecting his mobility. Running away won't change who you are, sweetheart. It'll just make you a scared person in a different location. Maybe that's all I know how to be now. She walked to the window and stared out at the mountain view she had been so proud of when she first moved in. From behind, she looked small and fragile, nothing like the confident, successful woman she portrayed on social media. "The offer stands," Dad said as we prepared to leave. "If you ever want to come home, if you ever want to try again, we're here." Sierra didn't turn around, but I saw her shoulders shake slightly. "I don't know how," she whispered. "You start by showing up," I said. "That's all any of us know how to do." We left her there, standing at the window of her perfect, empty apartment, and I knew it might be the last time I ever saw my twin sister. The drive home was quiet, both of us lost in our own thoughts. Finally, Dad spoke. "I failed her somewhere along the way." "No, you didn't," I said firmly. "You gave her the same love and support you gave all of us. She chose to reject it. But I must have done something wrong for her to turn out so scared of caring about people." I thought about that for a long time before answering. Maybe some people are just built different, Dad. Maybe some people have hearts that bruise easier, so they build walls to protect themselves. That's not your fault. "I keep thinking about that little girl with the broken bird," he said softly. "She cared so much it made her cry. What happened to that compassion?" "I think it's still there," I admitted. "I think that's why she's so scared. She still has that big heart. She's just buried it so deep she's forgotten how to access it." But as we pulled into my parents' driveway, I realized something that changed my perspective entirely. It didn't matter if Sierra's heart was still there somewhere, buried under layers of fear and self-protection. What mattered was that she had made a choice to prioritize her own comfort over her family's well-being. She had looked at our father's heart attack and decided it wasn't her problem. She had chosen to be absent during one of the most frightening experiences of our lives. And regardless of her reasons, regardless of her fears or trauma or whatever had shaped her into the person she had become, that choice had consequences. I was done making excuses for her. I was done trying to understand and forgive and bridge gaps that she kept widening with her indifference. Sierra wanted to be left alone? Fine. I would give her exactly what she wanted. That night, I blocked her number. I unfriended her on all social media platforms. I removed her from my emergency contacts and deleted the spare key to her apartment from my keychain. If Sierra wanted to live her life free from the obligations and expectations of family, she could do it without any connection to me. For the first time in 26 years, I was done being her twin. The months that followed were a revelation. Without the constant underlying stress of managing Sierra's relationship with our family, without the mental energy I had been spending on making excuses for her behavior, I found myself with space I didn't know I had been missing. I started saying no to things I didn't want to do. When Mom asked me to drive her to 3 different stores for the perfect ingredients for Sunday dinner, I suggested she order groceries online instead. When Marcus needed help moving again, I recommended a moving company instead of volunteering my weekend. It wasn't that I stopped caring about my family. I just stopped treating myself like I was the only one capable of caring about them. And something amazing happened. They started taking care of things themselves. Mom learned to use grocery delivery and discovered she actually enjoyed the convenience. Marcus hired movers and realized it was worth the expense to not spend his day hauling furniture up 3 flights of stairs. Emma started organizing her own social events instead of relying on me to handle the details. They were all more capable than I had given them credit for. My constant rescuing had actually been holding them back from developing their own problem-solving skills. But the biggest change was in how I saw myself. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't defined by my relationship to other people. I wasn't Marcus's helpful sister, or Emma's reliable backup, or Sierra's devoted twin. I was just Celeste, a person with my own interests and goals and dreams. I started taking art classes on Tuesday nights. I had loved drawing as a child, but had given it up because Sierra had been the artistic one in the family, and I didn't want to compete with her. Now I remembered how much joy I found in creating something beautiful with my own hands. I joined a hiking group and discovered that I loved the desert landscape I had grown up taking for granted. The mountains that had always been backdrop became destination, and I found peace in the quiet trails and spectacular sunrises. I even started dating, something I had barely had time for when I was managing everyone else's crises. A fellow nurse named David asked me out after we had worked several shifts together, and I was surprised to find that I actually enjoyed getting to know someone new without the constant interruption of family obligations. David was kind and funny and completely uninterested in being rescued. He paid his own bills, maintained his own friendships, and solved his own problems without expecting me to manage his life for him. It was refreshing to be with someone who wanted my company, not my services. 6 months after Dad's heart attack, we had a family dinner to celebrate his full recovery. The cardiac rehab program had been a huge success, and his doctors were amazed by his progress. He looked healthier than he had in years, having lost weight and gained energy through the supervised exercise program. As we sat around the dinner table, I noticed something that would have been invisible to me before. There were only 4 of us, but the conversation was livelier and more genuine than it had been in years. Without Sierra's subtle criticism and passive-aggressive commentary, everyone seemed more relaxed. Emma was funnier when she wasn't trying to compete for attention. Marcus was more talkative when he wasn't defending himself against Sierra's judgment about his blue-collar job. Mom seemed lighter, no longer walking on eggshells to avoid triggering one of Sierra's moods. Even Dad, despite missing his daughter, seemed less tense. He laughed more easily, told stories without qualifying them, expressed opinions without waiting for Sierra's approval or disapproval. "I have an announcement," Emma said as we were clearing the dishes. "I got the internship at the veterinary clinic downtown. I start next month." The excitement in her voice was infectious. Emma had been talking about becoming a veterinarian since high school, inspired by the same love of animals that Sierra had once possessed. But she had been hesitant to pursue it, claiming it was too competitive, too difficult, too expensive. Now I realized that Sierra's constant negativity about following dreams that required sacrifice had been holding Emma back. Without that discouraging voice, Emma had found the courage to apply for the internship she really wanted. "That's incredible," I said, hugging her tight. "You're going to be an amazing vet." "I was thinking about what Dad said about that bird Sierra tried to save when we were kids," Emma said. "I want to be the person who actually can save them, you know?" Dad's eyes filled with tears, and I knew he was thinking about Sierra too. The daughter who had once cared so much about a broken-winged bird that she cried for days when it died. The daughter who was now so disconnected from her own compassion that she couldn't manage to care about her father's heart attack. But this was Emma's moment, not Sierra's. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel guilty about celebrating someone's success without worrying about how it might make Sierra feel. After dinner, I helped Mom with the dishes while Dad and Marcus watched sports on TV, and Emma studied for her veterinary prerequisites at the kitchen table. It was a normal, comfortable evening with people who showed up for each other. "I miss her," Mom said quietly as she handed me a plate to dry. "I know. Do you think she'll ever come back?" I considered the question carefully before answering. "I think she'll come back when she's ready to be part of a family instead of just taking from one." What if that never happens? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with the possibility that Sierra might never choose to reconnect with us, that we might lose her forever, not to death or distance, but to her own inability to let herself be vulnerable enough to love. "Then that's her choice," I said finally, "and we can't make it for her." Mom nodded, tears in her eyes, but I could see acceptance beginning to replace the desperate hope she had been carrying. Sierra had made her position clear. The rest of us deserved to stop waiting for her to change her mind. That night, as I was getting ready for bed in my studio apartment, I caught sight of myself in the bathroom mirror. I looked different somehow, lighter, more solid, like I was taking up the space I was meant to occupy, instead of shrinking myself to make room for other people's dysfunction. I thought about the Celeste from 6 months ago, the one who would have spent this entire evening worried about Sierra's absence, making excuses for her, trying to find ways to bring her back into the family fold. That Celeste had been so focused on fixing other people that she had forgotten to live her own life. This Celeste, the one looking back at me from the mirror, was different. She had boundaries, she had interests, she had a relationship with a man who respected her independence. She had art supplies scattered across her kitchen table, and hiking boots by the front door, and plans for the weekend that didn't involve rescuing anyone from their own choices. This Celeste had been forged in the fire of abandonment, but instead of being destroyed by it, she had been refined, strengthened, clarified. I brushed my teeth and got into bed, checking my phone for messages from David about our plans for tomorrow. No crisis texts from family members, no guilt-inducing messages from Sierra, no obligations or emergencies or other people's problems demanding my immediate attention. Just peace. Just the quiet satisfaction of a life lived for myself, in connection with people who valued my presence instead of my services. As I was drifting off to sleep, I heard my phone buzz with a notification. For just a moment, my heart jumped with the old reflex, the ingrained habit of assuming someone needed me to fix something. But when I checked the message, it was just David sending me a photo from his night shift at the hospital, a sunset he had captured from the break room window, with a caption that said, "Thinking of you." No crisis, no emergency, no one asking me to drop everything and come running. Just someone who cared about me, sharing a beautiful moment. I smiled and set my phone aside without feeling compelled to respond immediately. David would understand that I was sleeping. He wasn't expecting me to be available 24 hours a day for his convenience. That was the difference between love and obligation. Love respected boundaries. Love didn't demand sacrifice. Love didn't require me to set myself on fire to keep other people warm. And for the first time in my adult life, I was surrounded by love instead of obligation. Sierra had intended to hurt us when she declared our father's heart attack not our problem anymore. What she had actually done was free me from the prison of trying to earn love through constant service. She had meant to abandon us, but what she had really done was give me permission to abandon the version of myself that existed solely for other people's benefit. In trying to reject our family, she had helped myself. And I was grateful for that, even if I could never forgive her for the way she had done it. The woman I was becoming would never have existed if Sierra hadn't forced me to choose between my own well-being and my devotion to people who didn't value it. She thought she was walking away from us. What she had really done was walk away from the last person who would have kept making excuses for her selfishness. And that person was never coming back. 1 year after Dad's heart attack, I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop reading a book about desert photography when I saw her. Sierra stood in line 3 people ahead of me, her designer handbag clutched tightly against her side, her posture rigid with the kind of tension that spoke of sleepless nights and constant anxiety. She looked thinner than when I'd seen her last, almost fragile, and there was something different about the way she carried herself. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by the careful movements of someone who had learned that the world could be harsh and unforgiving. My first instinct was to get up and leave before she noticed me. I had built a good life in the years since our confrontation at her apartment, and seeing her threatened to drag me back into the messy, emotional territory I had worked so hard to escape. But something made me stay. Maybe it was curiosity about what had become of my former twin. Maybe it was the artist in me, drawn to document this unexpected encounter. Or maybe it was simply that I was no longer the person who ran away from uncomfortable situations. Sierra got her coffee and turned toward the seating area, scanning for an empty table. Her eyes found mine across the crowded cafe, and for a moment, neither of us moved. I watched surprise, fear, and something that might have been relief flicker across her face. She approached my table slowly, like she was approaching a wild animal that might bolt at any sudden movement. "Hi," she said softly, hovering beside the empty chair across from me. "Hi. Can I sit?" I gestured to the chair without saying anything. Sierra sat down carefully, placing her coffee cup on the small round table between us, with hands that trembled slightly. We sat in silence for several long minutes, the noise of the cafe swirling around us like a protective barrier. I studied her face, noting the dark circles under her eyes that no amount of expensive concealer could hide, the way her cheekbones had become too prominent,
the nervous habit she had developed of picking at her cuticles. "You look good," she said finally. "Happy." I was happy. The past year had been transformative in ways I never could have imagined. My art was improving rapidly, and I had even sold a few pieces to local galleries. David and I were talking about moving in together. I had been promoted to charge nurse in my department. Life was full and rich and mine. "I am happy," I replied honestly. "I heard about your promotion. Congratulations." I raised an eyebrow. "How did you hear about that?" Sierra flushed slightly. "I still follow Mom on social media. Different account, but she doesn't know it's me." The admission hung between us like a confession. Sierra had been watching our family from a distance, keeping tabs on our lives while refusing to participate in them. "Why?" I asked. "Why what? Why do you watch from the shadows if you don't want to be part of our lives?" Sierra stared into her coffee cup, as if it might contain the answers she was looking for. "I don't know," she whispered. "I guess I wanted to make sure you were all okay without me." "We are." The words came out harsher than I intended, but they were true. We had not only survived Sierra's abandonment, we had thrived. The family dynamic had become healthier, more authentic, more genuinely supportive without her negative influence. Sierra winced as if I had slapped her. "Good, that's good." "Is it? Because you don't look like someone who's happy about their family doing well without them." She was quiet for so long I thought she might get up and leave. Finally, she spoke in a voice so soft I had to lean forward to hear her. "I made a mistake."
3 simple words that carried the weight of a year's worth of pain and regret. I waited for her to continue. "I thought I was protecting myself by cutting everyone off. I thought independence meant not needing anyone, not caring about anyone, not letting anyone have the power to hurt me. And I was wrong. Turns out loneliness hurts worse than vulnerability. Turns out cutting yourself off from love doesn't protect you from pain. It just guarantees that pain is all you have left." I set my book aside and gave Sierra my full attention. This was a conversation I had imagined having hundreds of times over the past year, but the reality was different from any scenario I had rehearsed in my mind. "I lost my job 6 months ago," Sierra continued, the words spilling out like water from a broken dam. "Budget cuts," they said, but I know it was because I couldn't work well with others anymore. I had become so focused on protecting myself that I forgot how to collaborate, how to trust, how to be part of a team." I felt a flicker of sympathy, but I pushed it down. Sierra's professional struggles were a consequence of her choices, not something I needed to fix. "I'm sorry to hear that. I've been living off my savings, applying for jobs, but every interview goes the same way. They ask about teamwork and communication skills, and I freeze up because I've forgotten how to connect with people." "What about your friends?" Sierra laughed bitterly. "What friends? Turns out most of my social relationships were based on what I could do for people or what they could do for me. When I stopped being useful and stopped needing their services, they disappeared." It was a harsh lesson, but not one I could rescue her from. Sierra had created this isolation through her own choices. "I think about Dad every day," she said suddenly, "about what would have happened if he had died that night, if the last thing he knew about me was that I thought his heart attack wasn't my problem. But he didn't die." "No, but I did. The person I used to be, the sister you grew up with, she died that night, and I killed her because I was too scared to let her feel anything." The admission was raw and painful, and despite everything Sierra had put us through, I felt my heart crack slightly. This wasn't the confident, selfish woman who had walked away from our family. This was someone who had been broken by their own choices and was trying to figure out how to put the pieces back together. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need you to know that I know. I understand what I did to all of you, what I threw away, what I lost. I need you to know that I'm sorry, not because I want something from you, but because you deserve to hear it." I studied Sierra's face, looking for signs of manipulation or self-serving motivation, but all I saw was genuine remorse and a kind of desperate honesty that I remembered from our childhood. "Okay," I said finally, "I hear you."
I don't expect forgiveness, Sierra continued quickly. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that the person who said those horrible things, who abandoned Dad when he needed us, that person was created by fear and selfishness and a complete misunderstanding of what strength actually looks like. And what does strength look like? It looks like you, Sierra said simply. It looks like showing up, even when it's hard, caring, even when it hurts, choosing love, even when you might lose it. It looks like everything I was too much of a coward to be. The words were beautiful, but they were also too late. Sierra's recognition of my strength didn't undo the damage she had caused or the pain she had inflicted when we needed her most. I appreciate the apology, I said carefully, but an apology doesn't erase the consequences of your choices. I know, I'm not asking it to. Then what are you asking for? Sierra was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the desert landscape beyond the cafe. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know. Maybe just the chance to sit here with you for a few minutes and remember what it felt like to have a sister. The request was so simple and so heartbreaking that I found myself nodding. We sat together in companionable silence, sipping our coffee and watching the world go by outside the window. I saw Emma's Instagram post about getting into veterinary school, Sierra said eventually. She's doing really well, top of her class. She always was the smart one. No, I corrected. She's the one who worked hard for what she wanted. There's a difference. Sierra nodded, accepting the gentle correction. And Marcus? Is he still working construction? He started his own company last month, already has more work than he can handle. That's amazing. He always was good with his hands. We talked for another hour, catching up on the mundane details of life that had continued without her. I told her about my art classes and my relationship with David and my promotion at work. She told me about her job search and her therapy sessions and the small apartment she had moved to when her savings started running low. It was the most honest conversation we had ever had, free from the undercurrent of resentment and obligation that had characterized our relationship for so many years. Without the weight of family expectations, we were just two people who had once been close, sharing coffee and memories. I should go, Sierra said finally, glancing at her phone. I have a job interview this afternoon. Good luck. Thank you. She stood up and gathered her things, then hesitated. Celeste? Yeah? I know I don't have the right to ask this, but would you tell Mom and Dad that I'm okay? Not that I want them to reach out or anything, just that I'm alive and getting help and trying to figure out how to be a better person. I considered the request. My parents had spent months worrying about Sierra, wondering if she was safe, if she was eating, if she was completely alone in the world. They deserved to know that their daughter was at least physically okay. I'll tell them. Relief flooded Sierra's face. Thank you. That means everything. She turned to leave, then stopped and looked back at me one more time. For what it's worth, I'm proud of who you've become. You were always the strongest one, but now you know it too. And then she was gone, walking out of the cafe and back into her solitary life, leaving me alone with my thoughts and my coffee and the echo of words I had waited my entire life to hear. That evening, I called my parents and told them about the encounter. Mom cried with relief to know that Sierra was alive and safe. Dad listened quietly, then said, I'm glad she's getting help. Everyone deserves a chance to become who they're meant to be. Even after everything she put us through? Especially then, Dad replied. People who hurt others the most are usually the ones who are hurting the most themselves. His capacity for forgiveness amazed me, but I wasn't ready to match it. Sierra's apology had been meaningful, but it didn't undo the year of pain and healing we had all endured because of her. 3 months later, I received an unexpected text from an unknown number. Hi, it's Sierra. I got a new phone.
I wanted you to know that I got a job. Nothing fancy, just administrative work at a nonprofit that helps families navigate medical crises. The irony isn't lost on me. I thought you might like to know that I'm trying to do some good in the world. Hope you're well. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Congratulations on the job. I'm glad you're finding ways to help people. Her reply came quickly. I learned from the best. That was the last contact we had for several months. I told my parents about her job, and I could see the hope flickering in their eyes, the desperate wish that Sierra might be finding her way back to the person they remembered. But I cautioned them against expecting too much too soon. Healing takes time, I told them, and Sierra has a lot of healing to do. My own healing was progressing beautifully. David and I had moved in together, creating a home filled with laughter and art and the kind of easy companionship I had never experienced before. My photography was improving rapidly, and I had my first solo show scheduled at a small gallery downtown. The art I was creating was deeply influenced by the desert landscape I had grown to love, but also by themes of solitude and strength and the beauty that could emerge from harsh conditions. In many ways, my work was a reflection of my own journey from codependency to independence, from background figure to main character in my own life. 6 months later, another text from Sierra. Saw the article in the newspaper about your art show. I wanted to come, but didn't want to make you uncomfortable. I bought one of your pieces online, though. The sunset over the mountains. It reminds me of the view from our bedroom window when we were kids. I hope that's okay. I was surprised by the gesture and touched despite myself. The piece she had purchased was one of my favorites, a study in light and shadow that captured the moment when day becomes night in the desert. That she had connected it to our shared childhood memories felt significant somehow. Thank you for supporting my art. That piece has special meaning to me too. I know, I could see it in the way you captured the light. You always saw beauty where the rest of us saw emptiness. The observation was more perceptive than I had expected from Sierra. Maybe therapy was helping her develop the emotional intelligence she had always lacked. As my first exhibition opened, I stood in the gallery surrounded by family and friends, watching people respond to my work with genuine appreciation and interest. Mom and Dad beamed with pride. Marcus brought his girlfriend to show off his artistic sister. Emma took selfies with every piece and posted them with captions about how talented I was. David stood beside me, his hand warm and steady on the small of my back, anchoring me in the moment. This was success on my own terms, achievement that had nothing to do with taking care of other people and everything to do with pursuing my own passions. You did this, David whispered in my ear as we watched someone purchase one of my photographs. You created all of this beauty. Looking around the gallery at my work, at the people who had come to celebrate with me, at the life I had built from the ashes of my old identity as everyone's caretaker, I felt a profound sense of completion. I had become the person I was meant to be, not in spite of Sierra's abandonment, but because of it. Her cruelty had been the catalyst that forced me to examine my own patterns and choose a different path. Near the end of the evening, as people were starting to leave, and I was taking down the small placards beside each photograph, I noticed a woman standing alone in front of the sunset piece Sierra had purchased online. She looked familiar, but it took me a moment to place her. It was Dr. Martinez, one of the social workers from the hospital where I worked. She specialized in helping families cope with medical crises, and I had worked with her many times over the years. "Beautiful work, Celeste," she said when she noticed me approaching. "Thank you. I didn't know you were interested in photography." "I'm not usually, but a colleague of mine insisted I come tonight. She said your work captures something essential about resilience and transformation." "A colleague?" "Sierra Morrison. She works with us now. She told me that her sister was having an exhibition and that I absolutely had to see it." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Sierra had not only purchased my art, she had encouraged others to come see my work. She was actively promoting my success, even though she wasn't comfortable attending the event herself. "Sierra works with you?" "She's been with us for about 6 months. Exceptional employee, actually. She has this ability to connect with families who are struggling with medical emergencies. Something about her approach makes people feel understood and supported." The irony was staggering. Sierra, who had declared our father's heart attack not our problem, was now dedicating her career to helping other families navigate medical crises. "She speaks about you often," Dr. Martinez continued. "She's incredibly proud of your work, both as a nurse and as an artist. She said you taught her everything she knows about showing up for people when they need it most." I excused myself and stepped outside the gallery, needing fresh air and space to process this information. Sierra was not only rebuilding her life, she was building it around service to others.
She was using the pain she had caused our family to fuel compassion for other families facing similar challenges. It didn't undo the hurt she had caused, but it suggested that she was genuinely committed to becoming a better person, not just for her own sake, but to make amends for the harm she had done. My phone buzzed with a text message. Sierra again. Dr. Martinez said she met you tonight. I hope it's okay that I asked her to come. I wanted someone who understands the importance of what you do to see how talented you are. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. It's okay. Thank you for encouraging her to come. Your art is beautiful, Celeste, but more than that, it's powerful. It shows people that something beautiful can grow from difficult circumstances. That's a gift. So is learning to care about others after you've forgotten how. I heard about your work at the medical center. There was a long pause before her response came. I'm trying to become the person you always believed I could be. It's harder than I thought it would be, but it's the only way I can live with myself now. I'm proud of you for trying. That means more to me than you know. 2 years after Dad's heart attack, our family had settled into a new rhythm that acknowledged Sierra's absence without being defined by it. We celebrated holidays and birthdays, marked milestones and achievements, supported each other through challenges and changes. Sierra remained on the periphery, sending occasional updates about her life and work, remembering important dates with thoughtful messages, supporting my art career from a distance. She never asked to home, never pushed for reconciliation, never demanded forgiveness or understanding. Instead, she seemed to have accepted that her choices had consequences, that some damage couldn't be undone, that some relationships couldn't be restored to their original form. But she also seemed to have found peace in making different choices moving forward. Her work helping medical families was by all accounts exceptional. She had developed a reputation for being able to reach people in crisis when no one else could get through to them. She understands what it feels like to abandon people you love, Dr. Martinez told me one day when we were working together on a difficult case. That gives her credibility with families who are struggling with guilt and fear. She can help them see that it's never too late to choose love over self-protection. The observation struck me as profound. Sierra's greatest failure had become her greatest strength in helping others. She could guide families away from the mistakes she had made because she understood the cost of those mistakes intimately. On the 3rd anniversary of Dad's heart attack, I received a letter in the mail. Not a text or an email, but an actual handwritten letter on cream-colored paper. Sierra's handwriting had always been more elegant than mine, careful and precise where mine was hurried and practical. Dear Celeste, it began. Today marks 3 years since the day that changed everything for our family.
I wanted to write to you on this anniversary because there are things I need to say that seem too important for a text message. I know that my apologies can't undo the pain I caused or the trust I broke. I know that saying I'm sorry doesn't give back the months you spent wondering if I was okay or the family gatherings that were diminished by my absence. I know that recognizing my mistakes doesn't erase their consequences. But I also know that growth is possible, that people can change, that it's never too late to choose love over fear. I know this because I've watched you do it. I've watched you transform from someone who gave everything to everyone into someone who gives generously from a place of strength rather than emptiness. You taught me that real love doesn't require you to sacrifice yourself. Real love doesn't ask you to be smaller so others can be bigger. Real love doesn't demand that you set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. I'm writing to tell you that I finally understand the difference between independence and isolation, between self-protection and selfishness, between having boundaries and building walls. I'm also writing to tell you that I don't expect anything from you. I don't expect forgiveness or reconciliation or a return to the relationship we used to have. I understand that some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. But I want you to know that every family I help at the medical center benefits from the lessons I learned from watching you love our family even when we didn't deserve it. Every person who feels alone in their crisis hears the echo of your voice when I remind them that they're not responsible for other people's choices, but they are responsible for their own. You saved me without knowing it, not by rescuing me from the consequences of my actions, but by showing me what strength and compassion actually look like. I will always be grateful for the sister who loved me even when I couldn't love anyone, including myself. I will always be sorry that I waited until I lost you to learn how to be worthy of that love. With respect and admiration, Sierra. I read the letter 3 times before setting it aside, my vision blurred with tears I hadn't expected to shed. This wasn't the desperate apology of someone seeking absolution or the manipulative plea of someone wanting to be rescued from their consequences. This was the acknowledgement of someone who had done the hard work of change, who had learned to find meaning in service rather than self-protection, who had discovered that the only way to heal the damage you've caused is to make sure you never cause that kind of damage again. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the box where I kept important documents. Not because I was ready to forgive Sierra completely or because I wanted to restore our relationship to what it had been, but because it was a beautiful piece of writing from someone who had learned to see clearly and speak truthfully. That evening, David found me on our back patio, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and pink. He settled beside me with 2 glasses of wine and the comfortable silence that came from years of knowing each other well. "Heard from Sierra today," I said eventually. "Good news or difficult news?" "Both. She wrote me a letter, a real one, handwritten, thoughtful. She's become someone I don't recognize, but in a good way." David nodded, understanding without needing details. He had watched me navigate the complicated grief of losing a sister who was still alive, had supported me through the process of rebuilding my identity apart from that relationship. "Does it change anything for you?" I considered the question carefully. I think it changes everything and nothing. It doesn't make me want to go back to the way things were, but it makes me feel like the story has a better ending than I thought it would. How so? Sierra learned something from losing us. She's using that knowledge to help other people avoid making the same mistakes. In a way, our family's pain is being transformed into someone else's healing. We sat together as the stars emerged in the darkening sky, and I thought about the unexpected ways that loss and growth intertwined, how the most difficult experiences could become the foundation for the most meaningful work. Sierra would never be my twin again in the way we had been as children. Too much had happened, too much trust had been broken, too much time had passed for that kind of intimate connection to be restored. But she had become something else, a cautionary tale that had ended in wisdom rather than tragedy, a person who had faced the consequences of her choices and used them to become someone who helped others make better ones. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was actually more than enough. Maybe that was the kind of redemption that was possible in real life, messy and imperfect, but ultimately meaningful. 6 months later, I opened my second solo exhibition at a larger gallery in downtown Phoenix. The theme was Desert Resilience, featuring photographs that captured the way life persisted and thrived in harsh conditions. The opening night was packed with art collectors, fellow artists, family, and friends. I wore a deep blue dress that matched the desert sky at twilight and felt confident and proud and completely present in my own life. Near the end of the evening, as I was saying goodbye to the last few lingerers, I noticed a woman standing alone in front of my largest piece, a panoramic view of sunrise over Camelback Mountain. It was Sierra. She looked healthier than she had in the coffee shop encounter 2 years earlier. Her face had filled out, her posture was more relaxed, and there was something settled about her that spoke of hard-won peace. She turned when she sensed me approaching, and we stood together looking at the photograph that had captured one of my favorite moments in the desert, when the world feels infinite and full of possibility. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "Thank you. Thank you for letting me come tonight. I know it's probably complicated having me here. It's okay. I'm glad you came." We stood in comfortable silence for several minutes, 2 women who had once shared everything and now shared very little, except a complicated history and a newfound respect for each other's journeys. "I'm moving," Sierra said eventually. "Oh? To Colorado. There's a position at Denver General working with trauma families. It feels like the next step in my healing." I nodded, unsurprised. Sierra had always been someone who needed to keep moving forward, who couldn't heal in the same place where she had been wounded. That sounds like a good opportunity. I wanted to say goodbye in person, and to thank you. For what? For showing me that it's possible to be strong without being hard, that it's possible to have boundaries without building walls, that it's possible to love people without losing yourself. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of years of learning and growing and becoming someone new. "You figured that out on your own," I replied. "I just happened to be there while you were learning it." Sierra smiled, and for a moment, I caught a glimpse of the little girl she had once been, before fear and selfishness had hardened her heart. Maybe we both learned it, she said. We said goodbye in the parking lot outside the gallery, a brief hug that acknowledged both the love we had shared and the distance we had traveled from each other. It felt like closure, like the final chapter of a story that had begun in shared DNA and ended in mutual respect. As I watched Sierra drive away into the desert night, I felt a sense of completion that I hadn't known I was missing. She was going to be okay. We were all going to be okay. And maybe that was the best possible ending for a story that had begun with such pain and abandonment. That night, I sat on my patio with David, looking up at the stars and feeling grateful for the long, strange journey that had brought me to this moment. I had become someone I could never have imagined when I was the invisible daughter hovering near the drinks cooler at family barbecues, desperate to be seen and appreciated. I had learned that being seen wasn't something I could earn through service or sacrifice. It was something I had to claim for myself, something I had to believe I deserved regardless of what I did for other people. Sierra had given me an unexpected gift when she declared our father's heart attack not our problem anymore. She had forced me to choose between my own well-being and my devotion to people who didn't value it appropriately. In choosing myself, I had discovered that I was worth choosing. In stepping away from the role of family caretaker, I had learned that I could take care of myself better than anyone else ever could. And in losing the sister I thought I needed, I had found the woman I was meant to be. The desert stretched out before us, vast and beautiful and full of life that had learned to thrive in difficult conditions. Like Sierra, like our family, like the art I created, from the raw materials of loss and healing. Like me. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.